In the far reaches of the galaxy, humanity had finally found a friend. For years, Earth struggled to survive among the stars, facing threats from powerful alien empires and mysterious forces beyond comprehension. But everything changed when they met the Valorans. The Valorans were an advanced species with sleek silver ships and technology that seemed almost magical. They shared Earth's vision of peace and unity, and together, the two civilizations formed an alliance. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and hope for a better future. But alliances can be fragile, especially in a universe full of enemies. One day, representatives from Earth and the Valorans gathered for a summit on Cytheris, a neutral planet known for its shimmering blue skies and towering crystal spires. The meeting was supposed to strengthen their bond and plan joint efforts to explore new star systems. John Carter, a decorated commander in Earth's Space Defense Force, stood alongside his Valoran counterparts, discussing strategies and sharing stories. He had grown close to many of them over the months, especially Kale, a young but wise Valoran leader who reminded him of his own brother back home. The atmosphere was calm, almost celebratory. Delegates exchanged gifts, and laughter filled the grand hall where the summit took place. But beneath the surface, danger lurked. Unknown to anyone, spies from the Galactic War Council had infiltrated the gathering. The Council was a coalition of aggressive alien factions who saw Earth and the Valorans as threats to their dominance. To them, peace meant weakness, and cooperation was a disease that needed to be eradicated. Suddenly, alarms blared across the compound. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Before anyone could react, the doors burst open, and heavily armed soldiers stormed in. They wore black armor adorned with jagged symbols, marking them as members of the Council's elite strike force. Chaos erupted instantly. Tables overturned, diplomats scrambled for cover, and laser fire lit up the room like fireworks. John dove behind a pillar, his heart pounding. He reached for his sidearm, but he knew it wouldn't do much against the Council's advanced weapons. Around him, Valorans tried to fight back using their energy blades and shields, but they were outnumbered. The attackers moved with ruthless efficiency, targeting the Valorans first. John watched in horror as Cal shielded a human delegate from a barrage of shots, taking multiple hits himself. The young leader collapsed to the ground, his glowing eyes dimming as life drained from him. "Kale," John shouted, rushing toward his fallen friend. But before he could reach him, another soldier blocked his path, raising a weapon. Thinking quickly, John grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the attacker, knocking him off balance. Seizing the moment, he sprinted to Cal's side. "Hold on," he said, gripping the Valoran's hand. But Kale only managed a weak smile before closing his eyes forever. The massacre continued unchecked. Bodies littered the floor, most of them Valorans. Human delegates huddled together, trying to stay alive. Over the commotion, a booming voice echoed through the hall. It belonged to Zorak, the ruthless leader of the Galactic War Council. His tall, menacing figure appeared on a holographic screen overlooking the chaos. "This is your warning, Earth," he declared, his tone cold and unyielding. "Sever ties with the Valorans, or you will suffer the same fate." When the attackers finally withdrew, silence fell over the devastated hall. Smoke hung thick in the air, and the once bright crystals of Cytheris now reflected only death and destruction. John knelt amidst the wreckage, anger boiling inside him. The Valorans had been betrayed, slaughtered without mercy. And now, Earth faced an impossible choice: abandon the survivors or risk total annihilation. As John stared at the lifeless body of Kale, he made a silent vow. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Back on Earth, news of the betrayal spread like wildfire. The images of destruction from Cytheris were broadcast across every screen. Cracked crystal spires, charred bodies, and the haunting faces of survivors who barely escaped with their lives. People gathered in streets and living rooms, watching in stunned silence as reporters described the massacre. It was a tragedy that shook humanity to its core. But it wasn't just sadness that filled the air. It was fear. Fear of what might come next. At Central Command, a sprawling underground facility buried deep beneath the mountains, Emily Dawson paced back and forth in front of a large holographic map of the galaxy. As head of Earth's planetary defense grid, she had spent years preparing for moments like this. Yet nothing could have prepared her for the scale of what had happened. The Valorans, humanity's closest allies, had been ambushed and nearly wiped out. And now, Zorek's ultimatum loomed over them all: sever ties or face extinction. An emergency meeting had been called, and the room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. Voices rose and fell as arguments broke out. Some believed Earth should comply with Zorek's demands. "We're not ready for another war," one general said, his voice trembling. "If we side with the Valorans, we'll be signing our own death warrant." Others argued fiercely against surrender. "We can't abandon them," shouted a senator, slamming his fist on the table. "They stood by us when no one else would. Turning our backs now makes us no better than the Council." Amid the chaos, Emily remained calm. She knew panic wouldn't solve anything. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Running away isn't an option," she said firmly. "If we give up the Valorans, we lose more than an ally. We lose ourselves. Humanity built this alliance on trust and hope. If we throw that away, what kind of future are we building?" Her words struck a chord, but there was still the matter of how to fight back. That's when Michael Grant stepped forward. A seasoned pilot with a reputation for daring missions, he had earned his place among Earth's top defenders. His short brown hair was slightly messy, and his uniform bore the marks of countless battles, but his sharp blue eyes burned with determination. "I'll lead the counterattack," he volunteered, his voice steady. "We may not have numbers, but we got guts, and guts can win wars." The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. Emily studied his face carefully. She had worked with Michael before and knew he wasn't reckless. He was calculated. If anyone could pull off a mission against the Galactic War Council, it was him. Still, the risks were enormous. "You realize what you're asking for?" she asked quietly. "This isn't just about flying ships and shooting lasers. This is about going up against the most dangerous force in the galaxy." Michael nodded. "I know exactly what I'm asking for, and I'm willing to pay the price if it means protecting Earth and honoring the Valorans who gave everything for us." Emily hesitated for only a moment before giving her approval. Once the decision was made, the real work began. They needed a team, and not just any team. A group of individuals capable of handling the impossible. Emily reached out to her network, pulling together some of the best minds and fighters Earth had to offer. Rachel Bennett, a brilliant engineer known for her ability to fix anything from broken engines to malfunctioning AI systems, was the first to join. Her quiet confidence masked a fierce loyalty to the cause. Next came Daniel Hayes, a sniper whose aim was legendary. He rarely spoke, preferring to let his actions do the talking. Laura Simmons rounded out the initial roster, bringing her medical expertise and unshakable compassion. Together, they formed the backbone of what would become Earth's most daring operation yet. As plans took shape, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on everyone. Late at night, Emily often found herself staring at the stars outside her office window. She thought about Kale and the other Valorans who had died so senselessly. Their sacrifice couldn't be in vain. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, Earth would stand and fight. For itself, for its allies, and for the hope of a better tomorrow. The team assembled in a large briefing room at Central Command. The walls were lined with screens displaying maps of star systems, enemy ship designs, and tactical data. Emily stood at the front of the room, her arms crossed as she surveyed the group. Each member had been chosen for their unique skills, but they were more than just specialists. They were people driven by a shared purpose. Still, bringing them together was only the first step. Trust would take time, and time was something they didn't have much of. Michael Grant leaned against the table, his sharp blue eyes scanning the faces around him. He recognized Rachel Bennett immediately. She was younger than most engineers he'd worked with, but her reputation preceded her. Her hands were always moving, fiddling with tools or sketching ideas on a tablet. Daniel Hayes sat quietly in the corner, his rifle resting across his lap. His calm demeanor made him seem almost detached, but Michael knew better. A man like Daniel didn't miss a thing. Then there was Laura Simmons, who carried herself with a quiet strength. Her medical bag was already packed, ready for whatever horrors awaited them. Emily began the meeting by laying out the mission's objective: locate the surviving Valorans and bring them back to Earth. Intelligence suggested that a small group had escaped the massacre and was hiding somewhere in the Andromeda system, but finding them wouldn't be easy. The Galactic War Council had eyes everywhere, and their patrols roamed the stars like predators hunting prey. "We'll need to move fast and stay hidden," Emily said, pointing to a map of the asteroid belt. "This is where we think they might be. If we're lucky, we'll find them before the Council does." Rachel raised her hand hesitantly. "What about the ships?" she asked. "The Council's vessels are faster and better armed than ours. How do we even stand a chance?" Michael stepped in, his voice firm but reassuring. "That's where you come in," he said, nodding at Rachel. "We've got some old cruisers lying around, but they're not much more than scrap metal right now. I need you to turn them into something we can actually use. Speed, stealth, whatever it takes." Rachel nodded, though doubt lingered in her expression. She wasn't used to being put on the spot, but she understood the stakes. "I'll do my best," she replied softly. As the meeting continued, tensions began to surface. Daniel spoke up, his voice low but sharp. "This isn't just about finding survivors," he said. "It's about revenge, isn't it? We're not just rescuing the Valorans. We're hitting back at the Council." His words hung in the air, unspoken truths that everyone felt, but no one wanted to admit. Emily didn't shy away from the question. "Yes, this mission is personal," she admitted. "But if we let anger drive us, we'll make mistakes. Our priority is survival. For Earth, for the Valorans, and for ourselves. Revenge can wait." Laura chimed in, her tone softer but equally resolute. "And what happens after we find them?" she asked. "Even if we bring the survivors back, how do we protect them? The Council won't stop until every last Valoran is gone." Michael clenched his jaw. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. "We fight," he said simply. "We fight smarter, harder, and longer than they expect. That's how we win." The hours passed quickly as the team hashed out details. Rachel sketched modifications for the ships, while Daniel studied patrol routes and identified potential ambush points. Laura reviewed medical supplies, ensuring they had everything needed to treat injuries in the field. Meanwhile, Michael worked closely with Emily to finalize their strategy. It was clear that each person brought something vital to the table, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on all of them. By the end of the day, exhaustion settled over the room. Yet despite the fatigue, a sense of determination began to grow. They weren't just a group of strangers thrown together. They were becoming a team. As they left the briefing room, Michael caught Emily's eye. "We'll get through this," he said quietly. "No matter what happens, we'll make sure the Valorans know they're not alone." Emily managed a small smile. "Let's hope so," she replied. "Because if we fail, none of us will have a home to return to." The journey to the Andromeda system was long and tense. The team traveled aboard the Eclipse Asterisk, a sleek, black cruiser designed for stealth. Its angular shape and matte finish made it nearly invisible against the vast darkness of space. Inside, the mood was quiet but focused. Each member had their role to play, and they worked tirelessly to prepare for what lay ahead. For days, the only sounds were the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of instruments. Michael sat in the cockpit, his hand steady on the controls. He kept a close watch on the navigation screen, ensuring they stayed on course. The asteroid belt where the surviving Valorans were believed to be hiding was dense with rocks and debris, making it both a perfect hiding spot and a dangerous maze. One wrong move could send the ship crashing into a massive asteroid or alert enemy patrols. "We're almost there," he muttered to himself, adjusting the ship's trajectory slightly. Rachel spent most of her time in the engineering bay, fine-tuning the modifications she'd made to the Eclipse Asterisk. She had upgraded the engines for better speed and added a cloaking device that could mask their heat signature. It wasn't perfect. She knew the Council's sensors were advanced, but it gave them a fighting chance. As she worked, sweat dripped from her brow, and her fingers moved quickly over the tools scattered around her. "Come on, hold together," she whispered to herself, tightening a final bolt. Daniel was stationed near the rear of the ship, monitoring the scanners for any sign of trouble. His sharp eyes never left the screens as he tracked nearby objects and analyzed data. Every now and then, he adjusted the settings to filter out false readings caused by the asteroid field. Though he didn't say much, his presence was reassuring. If danger came, he would be the first to spot it, and the first to act. Laura busied herself in the medical bay, organizing supplies and checking equipment. She wasn't sure how many survivors they would find, or what condition they'd be in, but she wanted to be ready for anything. Her mind raced with possibilities: injuries, infections, even alien diseases she might not recognize. Still, she pushed her fears aside and focused on the task at hand. One step at a time, she reminded herself, folding bandages neatly into a kit. When they finally reached the asteroid belt, the tension on board rose sharply. The ship slowed to a crawl as Michael carefully navigated between the massive rocks. Some were as big as mountains, while others tumbled wildly through space like deadly projectiles. The team held their breath as the Eclipse Asterisk slipped deeper into the chaos. "This is insane," Rachel murmured under her breath, gripping the edge of her workstation. But there was no turning back now. After hours of careful maneuvering, Daniel spotted something unusual on the scanners. A faint energy signal emanated from behind a cluster of asteroids. It was weak, almost undetectable, but it matched the profile of Valoran technology. "I think we found them," he said, his voice calm but urgent. Everyone gathered in the cockpit to see for themselves. Michael guided the Eclipse Asterisk closer, keeping the ship's systems on low power to avoid detection. As they rounded a large asteroid, the source of the signal came into view: a small, damaged Valoran vessel clinging to the shadow of a rock. Its hull was battered, and parts of it glowed faintly with emergency lights. It looked abandoned, but Michael wasn't about to take chances. "Stay sharp," he warned the team as he brought the Eclipse Asterisk alongside the wreckage. They suited up and prepared to board the Valoran ship. Laura double-checked her medical bag, while Daniel loaded his rifle and checked its sights. Rachel carried a portable scanner to assess the ship's systems. Michael led the way, his heart pounding as they crossed the airlock. The interior of the ship was dark and eerily silent, except for the faint hum of failing power. Broken consoles lined the walls, and the floor was littered with debris. Then they heard it, a soft sound like someone breathing. They followed the noise to a dimly lit chamber, where a lone figure stood leaning against a console. It was Kale, the young Valoran leader John had tried so desperately to save on Xitharis. His armor was cracked, and his glowing eyes flickered weakly, but he was alive. "You came," he said, his voice barely audible. Michael stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "We're here to help," he said firmly. "You're not alone anymore." Kel's voice was weak, but his words carried a weight that filled the room. "You came," he repeated, his glowing eyes flickering as if struggling to stay lit. Michael moved closer, his weapon now slung over his shoulder. He could see the exhaustion etched into Kel's face, both physical and emotional. The young Valoran leader looked like someone who had been carrying the weight of an entire civilization on his shoulders. "We're here," Michael said firmly, kneeling beside him. "But we need to get you out of here. This ship isn't safe." Laura stepped forward, her medical bag already open. She scanned Kel quickly with a handheld device, her brow furrowing as she read the results. "He's stable for now, but he needs rest and proper care," she said, pulling out a small injector. "This will help stabilize his energy levels." She pressed the injector against Kel's arm, and within moments, some of the tension seemed to ease from his posture. His breathing steadied, and the faint glow in his eyes brightened slightly. Rachel examined the ship's control panel, her fingers flying over the damaged interface. "This thing is barely holding together," she muttered. "If we don't move soon, it'll fall apart completely, or worse, attract attention." She glanced at Michael. "We should transfer him to the Eclipse as fast as possible." Daniel kept watch near the airlock, his rifle ready. Every sound outside made him tense, and his sharp eyes scanned the darkness beyond the ship's windows. The asteroid belt was quiet, for now, but they all knew how quickly that could change. "Let's hurry," he said, his tone clipped. "I don't want to be here when the council shows up." With Laura supporting Kale, the group carefully made their way back to the Eclipse. The journey was short but tense, each step feeling heavier than the last. Once aboard, Kale was taken to the medical bay, where Laura worked tirelessly to patch him up. She cleaned his wounds, applied synthetic bandages, and hooked him up to a machine that monitored his vital signs. Though his injuries were severe, she assured the team he would recover with time. As Kel rested, Emily gathered everyone in the main cabin. The mood was somber but hopeful. They had found one of the surviving Valorans, but there were still questions to answer. What happened after the attack? Emily asked gently, sitting across from Kale. "Are there others?" Kale nodded slowly, his voice stronger now. "Some of us escaped. We scattered across the system, hoping to avoid detection. But the Council, they hunt us relentlessly. Many have been captured or killed." His expression darkened. "They destroyed our empire, shattered our people. And now, they want Earth too." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Emily clenched her fists, her jaw tightening. "We can't let them win," she said finally. "Tell us everything you know about their forces, their ships, their weapons, their plans. If we're going to fight back, we need every advantage." Kale hesitated, then reached for a small device strapped to his wrist. It was a data crystal, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. "This contains information about the Council's operations," he explained. "It's everything I managed to save before fleeing Scytheris. You'll find maps, patrol routes, and details about their stronghold." Rachel took the crystal eagerly, her mind already racing with possibilities. "This could be exactly what we need," she said, plugging it into a tablet. Lines of code and schematics began to appear on the screen. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the data. "Their technology is incredible, but also vulnerable. There are weak points we can exploit." Michael leaned over her shoulder, studying the information. "Good work," he said, turning to the group. "We'll use this to plan our next move. But first, we need to regroup. Rest up, repair the ship, and prepare for whatever comes next." For the first time since the massacre, there was a glimmer of hope. Kale watched the humans work, his heart swelling with gratitude. These people, these fragile, determined humans, had risked everything to save him. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they might just stand a chance against the Council. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Kale spoke softly to Emily. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Not just for saving me, but for believing in us, for not giving up." Emily smiled faintly, though her eyes reflected the gravity of their mission. "We're in this together," she replied. "No matter what happens, we'll fight for a better future for both our peoples." While the team aboard the Eclipse worked tirelessly to process Kel's data and prepare for their next move, chaos erupted back on Earth. The Galactic War Council had struck again, this time targeting one of humanity's outer colonies. News of the attack spread quickly, sending shockwaves through Central Command and beyond. The colony, named Haven 7, was a small but thriving settlement nestled on a moon orbiting a gas giant. It wasn't heavily fortified, and its defenses were no match for the Council's overwhelming firepower. The first signs of trouble came in the form of explosions that lit up the night sky like fireworks. Civilians ran for cover as enemy ships descended from orbit, raining destruction on the surface. Buildings crumbled, streets were torn apart, and fires raged uncontrollably. The Council's soldiers moved methodically through the ruins, rounding up survivors and executing anyone who resisted. It was a brutal display of power meant to send a message. Earth's defiance would not be tolerated. Back at Central Command, Emily watched the footage with a growing sense of dread. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edges of her desk, her knuckles white. Reports poured in from Haven 7. Hundreds dead, thousands displaced, and countless lives shattered in an instant. The images of burning homes and frightened faces haunted her. She felt anger rising within her, but also guilt. Had they acted too slowly? Could they have prevented this? John Carter stood nearby, his face pale as he stared at the screen. He had seen war before, but this was different. This wasn't just about territory or resources. It was about erasing hope itself. "They're testing us," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "Showing us what happens when we stand against them." Emily nodded, though her mind raced with questions. "We can't let fear dictate our actions," she replied. "If we do, we've already lost." But deep down, she wondered how much more destruction Earth could endure. The attack galvanized the population in ways no one expected. Protests erupted across cities worldwide, with people demanding action against the Council. Factories that once produced cars and electronics shifted gears, churning out weapons and supplies for the war effort. Volunteers lined up by the thousands to join the military, many of them young men and women barely out of school. Even children contributed, organizing drives to collect food and medicine for refugees from Haven 7. Rachel monitored the news from the *Eclipse*, her heart sinking with each update. She thought about her own family back on Earth and wondered if they were safe. "This changes everything," she said to Michael, her voice trembling. "If they can hit a colony so easily, what's stopping them from attacking Earth itself?" Michael didn't answer right away. He leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his expression grim. "Nothing," he admitted finally. "That's why we have to strike first. If we wait for them to come to us, it'll be too late." Cale listened silently, his glowing eyes reflecting the dim light of the ship's cabin. He understood the gravity of the situation better than anyone. His people had faced the same brutality, the same calculated cruelty. "The Council doesn't care about peace or justice," he said softly. "All they understand is strength. You must show them you won't back down." Using the data Cale provided, Rachel and Emily identified a critical weakness in the Council's strategy. Their supply lines stretched across vast distances, relying on unshielded access points to resupply their fleets. If they could target these points, they could cripple the Council's operations without engaging their main forces directly. Daniel studied the plans carefully, pointing out potential ambush zones and defensive positions. "It's risky," he said, tracing a route on the map. "But if we pull it off, we might buy ourselves some breathing room." Laura focused on preparing the team for what lay ahead. She restocked medical kits and double-checked emergency protocols, ensuring everyone knew what to do in case of injury. "We're going to need every bit of luck we can get," she said, forcing a smile. "But I trust this team. We'll make it through." As the *Eclipse* charted its course toward the Council's supply line, a renewed sense of purpose filled the air. They weren't just fighting for revenge. They were fighting for survival. For Haven 7, for Earth, and for the future of all free beings in the galaxy. The *Eclipse* approached the Council's supply line under the cover of darkness, its cloaking device masking its presence from enemy sensors. The team moved with precision, each member focused on their role. Michael piloted the ship with steady hands, guiding it through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. The tension in the cockpit was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone knew this was their best, and possibly only, chance to strike back. Rachel monitored the ship's systems, her eyes glued to the screens as she ensured the cloaking device held steady. "We're almost at the access point," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. She adjusted a few settings, making sure the ship remained undetected. "If we can disable this supply hub, it'll cripple their fleet for weeks." Daniel sat near the airlock, his rifle resting across his lap. His sharp eyes scanned the surrounding space, searching for any sign of trouble. The Council's patrols were unpredictable, and even the slightest mistake could give away their position. "Stay ready," he said quietly, his tone calm but firm. "We don't know what's waiting for us out there." Cale stood beside Emily, studying the tactical map projected onto the wall. He had shared everything he knew about the Council's operations, but uncertainty still lingered. "This is their weakest link," he said, pointing to the glowing dot that marked the supply hub. "But they'll guard it fiercely. Expect resistance." Emily nodded, her mind racing through the plan one last time. "We hit hard and fast," she said. "Disable the hub, gather intel, and get out before reinforcements arrive. No heroics." Her gaze swept across the team, meeting each person's eyes. "We stick together." "Understood." Everyone nodded, their expressions resolute. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about sabotage. It was about proving to the Council that Earth wouldn't back down. As the Eclipse docked silently at the edge of the supply hub, the team suited up and prepared to disembark. Laura double-checked her medical bag, ensuring she had enough supplies to handle injuries. Rachel handed out modified devices designed to disrupt the hub's systems. "These will fry their power grid," she explained, holding up a small blinking gadget. "Just make sure you place them at the key points I marked on your maps." Michael led the way, his weapon drawn as they stepped into the dimly lit corridors of the supply hub. The air was cold and stale, filled with a faint hum of machinery. The place was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. Daniel took point, his movements cautious as he scanned every corner. "Clear," he whispered after checking a junction. The team split into pairs, each group heading to a different section of the hub. Michael and Daniel worked together to plant the disruptors, while Rachel and Cale focused on downloading data from the main console. Emily stayed close to Laura, keeping watch and providing backup. It didn't take long for things to go wrong. As Rachel uploaded the data, alarms blared suddenly, piercing the silence. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the corridors in an ominous glow. "They know we're here," Rachel shouted, her fingers flying over the console. "Almost done." "Move faster," Michael barked, glancing over his shoulder. Enemy soldiers poured into the corridors, their weapons firing brightly in the dark. Daniel returned fire, his shots precise and deadly. "We've got company," he yelled, taking cover behind a stack of crates. Laura crouched low, clutching her medical bag tightly. Emily fired her sidearm, hitting an enemy soldier who had gotten too close. "Fall back," she ordered, her voice firm despite the chaos. "We need to regroup." Cale finished downloading the data and grabbed Rachel's arm. "Let's go," he urged, pulling her toward the exit. The team fought their way back to the Eclipse, dodging enemy fire and narrowly avoiding traps. By the time they reached the ship, their suits were scorched, and their breaths came in ragged gasps. As the Eclipse disengaged from the hub, the disruptors detonated, sending a cascade of explosions rippling through the facility. The team watched in silence as the hub collapsed into flames, their victory tempered by the knowledge that the fight was far from over. "We did it," Michael said finally, breaking the quiet. "But this is just the beginning." With the Council's supply hub destroyed, the team aboard the Eclipse turned their focus to the next phase of their mission: infiltrating the Council's stronghold. The data they had retrieved from the hub revealed critical details about its defenses, patrol patterns, and a potential weak point, an unshielded access tunnel used for maintenance. It was risky, but it offered them their only chance to strike at the heart of the enemy. The journey to the stronghold was tense. The massive moon loomed ahead, orbiting a dying star that cast an eerie red glow across the surrounding space. Its surface was covered in jagged peaks and dark craters, with weapons turrets bristling like thorns. The fortress itself was a monolithic structure built into the moon's core, its blackened walls glinting faintly under the star's dim light. To approach it was to step into the jaws of death. Michael guided the Eclipse carefully, keeping the ship cloaked as they navigated through debris fields and avoided detection by enemy patrols. "This is it," he said, his voice low but steady. "Once we go in, there's no turning back." Rachel double-checked the disruptor devices she had prepared, ensuring they were ready to disable key systems within the stronghold. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, but her focus never wavered. "These should give us enough time to get inside," she said, glancing at the others. "But we'll have to move fast." Daniel studied the schematics one last time, memorizing every detail of the access tunnel. "It's narrow," he warned. "If we run into trouble, there won't be much room to maneuver." His tone was calm, but his sharp eyes betrayed his unease. Laura packed extra medical supplies, knowing the injuries they might face would be severe. She tried to stay optimistic, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on her chest. "Just promise me you'll all come back alive," she said quietly, forcing a small smile. "I can't fix everyone if things go sideways." Cale stood near Emily, his expression resolute. He carried a Valorant energy blade at his side, its faint blue glow reflecting in his eyes. "For my people," he said simply, gripping the hilt tightly. "And for yours." As the Eclipse docked silently near the access tunnel, the team suited up and prepared to disembark. Michael led the way, his weapon drawn as they entered the dark, claustrophobic passage. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of their footsteps echoed eerily off the metal walls. Daniel took point, scanning ahead for traps or ambushes. "Clear so far," he whispered, motioning for the others to follow. They moved quickly, placing disruptors along the way to disable security systems and turrets. Rachel worked swiftly, her fingers flying over the controls as she hacked into consoles. "Got it," she muttered after disabling another barrier. "Keep moving." The deeper they went, the more intense the resistance became. Enemy soldiers appeared suddenly, their weapons firing brightly in the confined space. Daniel returned fire, his shots precise and deadly. "We've got company," he shouted, taking cover behind a fallen beam. Laura tended to a graze wound on Emily's arm, while Cal slashed through an enemy with his energy blade, his movements fluid and determined. Finally, they reached the central command chamber, where Zorak awaited them. The leader of the Galactic War Council stood atop a raised platform, his towering figure clad in black armor adorned with jagged symbols. His cold gaze locked onto the intruders, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You dare challenge me," he sneered. "You're already dead." Michael stepped forward, his weapon aimed squarely at Zorak. "Not today," he replied, his voice unwavering. "Today, you fall." A fierce battle erupted, the chamber filled with the sounds of gunfire and clashing blades. Daniel picked off enemy soldiers with lethal precision, while Kel engaged Zorak in a brutal duel. Their weapons clashed violently, sparks flying as they fought for dominance. Laura stayed close to Emily, treating wounds and keeping her shielded from harm. Amid the chaos, Rachel planted the final disruptor near the core reactor, setting it to overload. "We need to go, now," she yelled, her voice rising above the noise. As explosions rocked the stronghold, the team fought their way back toward the exit. Kale delivered a final blow to Zorak, sending him crashing to the ground. "For my people," he growled, his blade glowing fiercely. With seconds to spare, they reached the eclipse and launched just as the moon began collapsing into the dying star. Behind them, the fortress was consumed in flames, its destruction marking a turning point in the war. As the eclipse sped away from the collapsing stronghold, the team watched in silence as the massive moon crumbled into the fiery embrace of the dying star. Explosions rippled across its surface, sending shockwaves through space like a cosmic storm. The fortress that had once symbolized the Council's power was now nothing more than debris and ash. For a moment, relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. Inside the ship, the cost of their victory began to sink in. Laura tended to everyone's wounds, her hand steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. Emily's arm was bandaged tightly, while Daniel bore a deep gash on his leg that made walking difficult. Cale leaned against a wall, his energy blade dimmed but still clutched firmly in his hand. His glowing eyes flickered faintly, evidence of the toll the battle had taken on him. Rachel sat quietly at a console, replaying the events in her mind, wondering if she could have done anything differently. But the heaviest burden fell on Michael. He stood near the cockpit, staring out at the destruction they had left behind. His thoughts kept returning to the final moments inside the stronghold. The chaos, the sacrifices, and the lives lost. One name lingered in his mind: Zorak. Though the council leader was gone, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that their fight wasn't truly over. Evil like that didn't die easily. "Michael," Emily said softly, approaching him. Her voice pulled him from his thoughts. "We did what we had to do. You saved us all." He turned to look at her, his expression grim. "Did we?" he asked, his tone heavy with doubt. "Zorak might be gone, but the council isn't. There are others out there who will try to pick up where he left off. This war isn't over, it's just beginning." Emily nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. "You're right," she admitted. "But for now, we've struck a blow they won't forget. We've shown them that Earth, and our allies, won't back down." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden jolt as the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and red warning lights flashed across the cabin. "What's happening?" Laura shouted, gripping the edge of her seat. Rachel scrambled to the controls, her fingers flying over the panels. The reactor core overloaded faster than expected. She yelled, "It's destabilizing the surrounding area. We need to get clear or we'll be caught in the blast zone." Michael rushed to the cockpit, his hands gripping the controls tightly. The ship groaned under the strain as he pushed it to its limits, trying to outrun the expanding shockwave from the collapsing moon. Behind them, the star flared brighter, swallowing everything in its path. The heat was intense, and the ship's shields began to falter. "We're not going to make it," Daniel shouted, clutching his injured leg as another violent tremor rocked the vessel. Cale stepped forward, his weakened body trembling with effort. "There's one way," he said, his voice strained but determined. "I can channel my energy into the engines. It'll give us the boost we need, but it will take everything I have left." "No," Emily protested, stepping toward him. "You've already sacrificed so much. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Cale replied, a faint smile crossing his lips. "This is my fight too. Let me do this, for all of us." Before anyone could argue further, Cale placed his hands on the ship's control panel. A surge of blue light pulsed through the eclipse, and the engines roared to life with newfound strength. The ship surged forward, narrowly escaping the shockwave as the star consumed the remnants of the stronghold. When they finally emerged into safer space, the crew sat in stunned silence. Cale collapsed to the floor, his energy spent. Laura rushed to his side, but it was clear he was fading fast. His glowing eyes dimmed, and his breathing grew shallow. "Thank you," he whispered, looking up at the team. "For everything." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she knelt beside him. "Rest now," she said softly. "You've earned it." As Cale closed his eyes for the last time, the weight of his sacrifice settled over them all. They had won the battle, but the war, and the memories of those they had lost, would stay with them forever. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to heal. News of the Council's defeat spread quickly, carried by whispers among star systems and broadcasts from Earth. The destruction of the stronghold had sent a clear message: humanity and its allies would not bow to tyranny. For the first time in years, hope flickered like a small flame in the darkness, fragile but alive. Back on Earth, John Carter stood at the edge of a quiet park, watching children play under the warm sun. The scars of war were still fresh: burned cities, grieving families, and empty chairs at dinner tables. But there was also resilience. People rebuilt homes, planted new trees, and dreamed of a brighter future. John thought about Kale and the other Valorans who had given everything for this moment. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Emily Dawson addressed a global assembly, her voice steady as she spoke of unity and determination. "We have faced our darkest hour," she said, standing before a crowd of world leaders and citizens. "But we have emerged stronger. Together, we will rebuild, not just for ourselves, but for all those who believe in peace." Rachel Bennett returned to her workshop, where tools and blueprints covered every surface. She spent hours refining Earth's defenses, determined to ensure no enemy could threaten their world again. Her hands moved with purpose, driven by memories of Cal's bravery and the team's shared struggle. "We can't stop now," she told herself. "Not when there's still so much to protect." Daniel Hayes walked alone along a rocky coastline, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The sniper who rarely spoke found solace in silence, listening to the waves crash against the shore. He thought about the battles they had fought and the lives they had saved. Though he carried the weight of loss, he also felt a quiet pride. They had done what few believed possible. Laura Simmons volunteered at refugee camps, tending to survivors from Haven 7 and other colonies devastated by the Council's attacks. Her gentle touch and kind words brought comfort to those who had lost everything. "You're safe now," she often said, holding someone's hand or bandaging a wound. "We'll get through this together." Michael Grant sat in the cockpit of the Eclipse Asterisk, staring out at the stars. The ship had become more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of their fight, their losses, and their triumphs. He thought about Cal's final moments and the promise they had made to honor his memory. "For Earth, for valor, for freedom," he whispered, echoing the vow he had made during the mission. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, surviving Valorans began to regroup under the leadership of Cal's sister, Lyra. She vowed to restore her people's empire and maintain the alliance with Earth. Messages of gratitude poured in from distant planets, thanking humanity for standing firm when others had faltered. Peace talks began, bringing together factions that had once been enemies. Slowly, trust began to grow. Trade routes reopened, and joint expeditions explored new star systems. It wasn't perfect. Tensions lingered and old wounds took time to heal. But it was progress. As life moved forward, the team reunited one last time aboard the Eclipse Asterisk. They gathered in the cabin, sharing stories and laughter, remembering those they had lost. Michael raised a glass, his voice filled with emotion. "To Kale," he said, "and to everyone who gave everything for this fight. We won't let their sacrifices be in vain." They drank in silence, united by shared pain and unyielding hope. The war had changed them all, leaving scars that would never fully fade, but it had also shown them what they were capable of when they stood together. In the vast expanse of space, Earth's defenders had struck with fury and emerged victorious. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them with courage, knowing they had already overcome the impossible.